and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And this year, Langley Air Force Base is celebrating its 100th anniversary, which is pretty remarkable because I think flight has only been around for 100 years, and Langley was at the foreground of that. So we're going to talk today with historian of the 1st Fighter Wing, Josh Lashley. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, ma'am.
You know, a lot of us think of the modern era of planes and you know, the F-22s and the F-15, the really cool big jets that are out there now. And we forget what it looked like at the beginning as Langley Airfield, right?
Yes, it's Langley Airfield is the first base the military invested in and purchased that was for the sole purpose of air power.
That's pretty darn. I mean, that's amazing foresight, really. We're talking about 100 years ago, so doing the math, 1916, what is the field of flight like at that time?
It's very early, so you're basically dealing with small wooden frame aircraft, still developing something that can stay up in the air longer than a couple minutes would be a success, and airships are, Zeppelin type aircraft.
I was going to say dirigibles. People now don't know what airships are, but that's what they were called at the time, and they're huge,
yes,
right?
Massive. The size of these hangars would hold, two city blocks or something like that. I mean, they're just massive hangars.
And they're pumped full of what?
A mixture of gases. Commonly helium is probably the most prominent gas in them, but. It looked nothing. Air power looked nothing like it did then. This was the forefront of aviation. Langley and Hampton roads is where theory is developed. It's where strategy is developed. It's where aircraft engineering is developed. The predecessor of NASA, which was NACA, the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, is behind the whole thing. It's all happening here in Hampton Roads. It really is the birthplace of American aviation.
I think, we sort of know that in the back of our minds, but forget to go 100 years back and think about, so they're developing basically side by side. I mean, the airfield came first by a short amount. And so how does that progression go?
The progression with
developing Langley and air technology and air fighting technology, because other people are working on commercial.
Yeah, so you're starting off and you're basically World War I's going on, and so we know we're flying in World War I. We had American pilots. We're about to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the first American pilots in combat, which is the Lafayette Escadrille, and it'll be celebrated in April of this year. We see that the air, at the time it's the Army, but they see that air power is a viable future. And so here on base, they start developing things, and it goes up to post-World War I, I'm sorry. And they do 1921. Billy Mitchell really fights for the proof to say, give me one airplane, I can sink a whole battleship.
It's one of those turning points, like in the Civil War when the ironclads were developed,
Yes.
Where it changes warfare forever. You see in World War I that the future is going to be in the skies. Not erasing the other warfighting strategies, but that has huge potential.
Yes, so it started as reconnaissance. It's just I need a set of eyes up there so I can see where the enemy is moving. Mm-hmm. And it developed into, well, give me a gun while I'm up here.
Might as well,
and
right?
And so now you have what starts off as pursuit, and they start air-to-air combat that way in World War I. But the ability to now develop, which starts here at Langley, is to go air to ground, is a whole different aspect that starts here. And
because I would imagine after World War I, the service is thinking, what's going to happen next time? We have to be ready. And did it ramp up pretty quickly after that?
Yes. So post-World War I, everybody sees it. This is something we need to think about, invest in, and learn about. It will be a viable part of all future conflicts. And it's all happening here at Langley. Right here, this community, on that same piece of land that we're on right now. We've grown quite a bit, but...
Right, there was very little infrastructure probably at the time. I mean, you had hangars, you had a building or two. It was not what it looks like now.
There was no runway, it was just grass. So they would take off, it was chosen because it was near water. They needed to be able to train out over the water. It was a flat area.
For safety. I mean, safety for the civilians, not safety for the pilots. If they go down in the water, it's as bad as if they go down on land. But
And also for training, because they knew at first they wanted to make sure they were able to attack naval ships.
Because that's part of the coastal defense and the U.S. defense.
At the time, navies are what the world is focused on. If you had a fancy navy, that's what made you a good military power. We started to shift to air power here at Langley. You really can't describe the United States Air Force without telling the story of Langley. Anybody who was anybody in the Air Force was here at some point in time in those early first 3 or 4 decades.
Wow. So then how does this come into play in World War II when air power was a very major force?
Yes, so what we at the time was called Air Corps Tactical School, which we now is the Air University, that was here at Langley, another accomplishment for the local area. They're studying theory and realize, hey, that air-to-ground bombers. So in World War II, what you have now is a lot more bombers.
Not just a gun, but we're going to drop. Okay.
Yes, and so the B-17, one of the most famous aircraft ever made, it starts here at Langley. It's first delivered here at Langley. Robert Olds, a very famous prior Air Force general, is in charge of it. And so what you have is the concept of large mass force of bombers. And in World War II, you saw that shift. There was still a lot of air-to-air combat going on in World War II. Langley and the theory that's developed here, all the big brains are here, all the big generals are here, and they're coming up with these new tactics to really also push strategic bombing. So now you have an Air Force. It's not a standalone Air Force yet, it's still part of the Army.
So it was still, I was going to ask at what point it broke off. So World War II, we're still
part of the Army.
It's
still part of the Army in World War II. But now you're able to you have enough practice and you have enough training and you have enough leadership to say we can do air-to-air and air-to-ground. And it really starts the fight for being able to be their own Air Force, to break off and be their own component. Yeah.
Wow. So when does that happen?
In 47.
Okay.
1947.
So just post-war after they've shown what they can do. And then how do things begin to develop? Because then you start to see more modern capabilities developing.
So right after World War II, you get into jet aircraft. And so with jet aircraft coming, it's a whole new world. Now you're no longer propeller driven, and the capabilities of these aircraft go all over. And also,
so range really changes at that point,
range
too,
changes and the world changes. So now you're entering post-World War II, you're thinking Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
And so air defense becomes, homeland defense becomes a very priority, defending the homeland. And Langley participates in that. So they have a unit here on base that is in charge of a certain area that defends the coast, and we had those units all over. But once again, Langley, also right around this time is what you have is Tactical Air Command, and which is the predecessor to Air Combat Command, is here. So this is a major base, and Homeland Defense is part of it. So post World War II, you get all kinds of new aircraft, but they're still going. They're still progressing, and it's still happening here at Langley.
So I think, you've hit on this, but I'm going to go back and repeat it because it took a while for it to sink into me, and maybe it did for some folks out there. So it's not just the missions who are here. It's not just the people flying and protecting us and waging war abroad. For our defense, it is also the thinking about what the next plane is going to be and how we're going to use it, and that strategery, as it's been called before. That's really headquartered right here.
Yes, so up through World War II, a lot of that senior air power leadership is here at Langley. Afterwards, after World War II, especially when they become their own service, of course that spreads out.
Well, it has to, because at that point they start developing a whole lot more bases.
Yes.
I mean, we realize that more money, more effort, more people, and the Cold War really was a period of intense spending on military and defense and development and deployment.
Yes, but we've always had the tactical leadership here. That's something Langley has been you know, the way to win that fight that thinking has always been here on Langley, and it still is here with Air Combat Command.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing because, you know, they're very quiet and unassuming people when you meet them, and most of us do meet them. I mean, a lot of folks at Langley have kids in our school system and come to meetings and interact and are on city partnerships and committees all the time, and you don't always realize what all they do and what's going on out there.
Yeah. Every day, I'm in awe of just how important that the base is to both on the size and, you know, and the link with the community, but also the history side of it and current operations. You know, it is just the tip of the spear.
So, what got you interested in the history out there?
It was something I had never experienced before. I was prior Army, but
hey, so were they.
yes. Theoretically, the Air Force was prior Army too, and it's technology driven. You're talking about 18-year-old kids up through, you know, whatever age you want to say. These people are smart. They are innovators. They are constantly finding ways to do the mission better, to fight the wars, and the war and you know, the conflicts that we're involved in. We need these people, and some of them fight from home side with technology. Some of them are flying overseas. The Air Force is an extremely interesting mission. Yeah.
You know, it is, and how much it has changed. Not that ground warfare hasn't changed, not that naval technology hasn't changed, but you really see it when you look at Langley and think about, yeah, those early propeller planes and dogfighting versus, you know, stealth planes that aren't as detectable by radar and that, you know, that do really different kinds of things now.
Yeah. So when you look at the 100 years of Langley in a microscope, you can really expand it out to 100 years of aviation. Mm-hmm. And it's represented here in a little smaller scale, but the airplanes that have been here really represent that shift from a wooden propeller-driven plane to a F-22 with, you know, stealth technology.
It is really amazing, and I'm told that when they have the air show this spring, they will bring out some of those planes and show some of the technology, and people will be able to learn a little bit about the history as well as what's going on out there now.
Yes, you're going to see a lot of good stuff at the air show.
Okay.
A lot of airplanes from all over, a lot of great demonstrations. In the open house, it'll be a very educational experience. I mean, we are the first Air Force base to turn 100, and we couldn't have done it without the community. And so it's our honor to be able to bring everybody on base and share that experience.
And our honor to be able to go on base and talk to you guys and learn more, because I think sometimes those of us who live in Hampton are a little complacent about our history and take it for granted and forget that, you know, we are the birthplace of military aviation, and we need to learn more about it and be proud and tell other people about it as well.
Yes, it's definitely something. If you're ever interested and you start digging, you're going to realize just how important this area has been to military history. Even back into the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, of course.
Right. Well, thank you so much for this history lesson. It's important to remember the past and what all we've learned as we go forward into the future.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you have learned a little more about the important history at Langley Air Force Base, and will enjoy seeing some of that history as well as the current when we get to the air show and open house. Thanks for watching.